A biofeedback room. Volcanic terrain, wrenches, and crevasses. Sound of rock being wrenched out of place. Suddenly, a white, steaming shaft of rock roars up, followed by another shattering emergence of rock the size of a small skyscraper, crushing the first shaft, forcing it to fold and crack and bend under the new weight. Jessup, off screen. My God, it's cracking. It's cracking. The whole thing is cracking. Enormous masses of rock. Rosenberg, off screen. Are you okay, Eddie? Jessup, off screen. I'm fine. Get this stuff. This is new. The black water of a vast lake is heaving and bubbling, when out of this sable sea an enormous volcanic cone of rock surges up, erupting with flame and boiling rock. Tons of plutonic explosion. A fantastic fountain of rock and scalding water rising 2,000 feet into the air. Another plutonic explosion. Jessup, off screen. Deafening. The noise is deafening. Can you hear me above this noise? My God. Deafening, agonizing sound accompanies the eruptions of earth crust. The breaking land with its rupturing of rock and mantle, each one piling on top of each other, steaming, white hot, folding, buckling, building. The air is filled with poisonous gases. Jessup, off screen. The most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. I'm watching the birth agony of a mountain. I can't believe this. Brigham Hospital, biofeedback room, night. Across Jessup on a leather reclining chair wearing a t-shirt and jeans with bare feet. 8 EEG leads issue from his scalp. His face is contorting into fierce grimaces, his mouth opening into silent, strangulated rictus. The lighting is subdued and the room sound attenuated and empty but for the chair. Through an observation window, two-way, in the background, we see Rosenberg and Parrish in the observation room. Jessup. My God, can't you hear it? The noise is stupefying. The observation room, day. Compactly and densely fitted out with recording equipment. 3 sheepskin-lined coats are piled on the floor. Rosenberg fiddles with controls. Parrish stands watching Jessup through the window, disturbed by what he's observing. Jessup over the amplifier. A whole mountain range is being born in front of my eyes. The biofeedback room, day. Reverse across Jessup, eyes wide open, bulging, madly staring. Jessup. And the sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood. And a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And the beast ascends from the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon. Sudden silence. The observation room, day. Silence, while through the window Jessup's face again becomes serene. The wheels of a Sony cassette recorder slowly whir. Rosenberg clicks the intercom. Are you okay, Eddie? Jessup, off screen, dispassionate, calm. I'm fine. Really, I'm fine. Parrish, still disturbed. Jesus Christ. Rosenberg, into intercom. Do you want me to bring you down? There is no response, only an uneasy silence settling over the room. Parrish. What happens now? Rosenberg. He's blacked out. These blackouts can get very freaky. Sometimes they last as long as 4 hours. When he comes out of it, he's as chipper as a bird, but he doesn't remember a thing. Parrish checks the EEG machine. Rosenberg. All the vital signs are normal. He just blacks out. Parrish. How did you explain my coming over here tonight? Rosenberg. I told him you called and asked how everything was since we hadn't seen each other in so long. And I said, why don't you come over tonight and bullshit for a while? And you said, terrific. Parrish, cutting him off. Just how dangerous is the stuff he brought back from Mexico? Rosenberg. I didn't say dangerous. I said it was weird. It hangs around too long. It goes to all the wrong places. This stuff doesn't degrade. I must have shot up 24 rats by now. We're retrieving 60, 70, sometimes 80%. And what's really screwy is its heads straight for the brain. I never saw a psychoactive drug that didn't wind up in the liver or in the kidney. There's nothing in that stuff I don't know. A lot of alkaloids. Principally cryogenic, some harmine. They're all known hallucinogens. Parrish, fed up, cutting Rosenberg off. Well, I don't believe this. You guys are shooting up with an untested drug that stacks up in the brain and works in the nucleus of the cell, and you don't call that dangerous? Rosenberg. For the record, we don't actually shoot up. Eddie drinks a 10 milligram per cc solution of this stuff. Parrish. Well, it's going to stop right now. Rosenberg. What are you yelling at me for? I've been trying to get him to stop for months. Parrish. You guys are supposed to be reputable scientists, for God's sake. Not two kids in the dorm freaking out on Mexican mushrooms. Rosenberg. Let's see you stop him. What do you think I called you for? Dissolved to later the same day, the same place. Same place. They clean up the room, getting ready to leave, gathering up the rolls of polygraph paper, putting on their coats. Parrish. Arguing for some time with some temper. This ain't LSD, goddammit. This ain't no serotonin antagonist you're drinking. How many grams of that stuff do you figure you've already got in you? 2? 3? You could be working up one hell of a case of cancer with a truck full of anti-metabolites in you like that. Jessup, heading for the door. The Hinchi Indians have been smoking that stuff for centuries with no special incidence of cancer. Parrish follows Jessup out into the 4th floor corridor, day, where Jessup slips into his sheepskin coat. Parrish. Fuck the Hinchi Indians. You don't know anything about those mushrooms. It sounds to me like they have fantastic staying power. Rosenberg turns off the lights in the biofeedback room and joins them, his tape recorder slung over his shoulder. Jessup locks up. They head out. Jessup. We shot up at least 30 rats with that stuff. Some of them have a whopping load in them, and none of them have been noticeably affected. He leans into the departmental office, the only lit room on the floor. He drops off the key. Jessup, to someone inside. Thanks. Harvard Medical School, Central Court, day. The 3 dark figures of our heroes cross the quadrangle for B buildings. Parrish is still quite exercised. Parrish. Now what's all this shit about an isolation tank? For God's sakes, you guys get flakier every time I see you. I thought all that isolation tank stuff went out in the 60s with Timothy Leary and all the other gurus. Where's this dumb isolation tank? They climb up the steps of B building and into Harvard Medical School B building foyer, day, and head for the stairway where they pause as Jessup expounds. Jessup. Mason, shut up for a minute and let somebody else say something. What happens during this blackout period is you get the feeling of phenomenal acceleration, like you're shot out over millions, billions of years. Time simply obliterates. You sense the hallucination is going on, but you get no images. Well, I want to break through that blackout barrier. I'd like to know what those images are that I know are going on but I can't see. He opens the door to the stairwell, and they go clattering down the steps. Jessup, we can't raise the dosage of the drug because we're close to toxic levels now. So the only way we can intensify the experience is to take the 200 milligrams in conjunction with a tank. Basement corridor. It has that basement look. It's after hours. Only a few other people are about. Parrish. There's lots of things I'd like to do to that drug before you take any more. We should do a half-life determination. I'd like to know the transport system. I'd like to find some analogs. Jessup. And that could take a year. All I know is this Mexican stuff is an extraordinary substance, and every instinct I have says I'm onto something hot here. And another 200 milligrams isn't going to kill anybody. He's found the room. He tries the door, but it's locked. He inserts a key he's brought. It turns. He opens the door. He enters. The isolation tank room, day. He turns on the flight. It says flight. I don't know if it meant light. Overhead fluorescent lighting flickers on. To the left is a brightly lit observation room, small and emptied of most equipment. With the exception of an EEG machine and its panel up against a sound-proofed wall, the aluminum shelving is all bare. Directly in front, the door leading to the tank room itself is opened when Jessup finds another key. This room is pitch black. A switch on the wall is found, and it allows graduated levels of light. Dude, hidden light comes up. There seems to be a bed with a naked striped mattress and pillow in the middle of the room. Jessup, they were doing sleep studies here. The room is now well lit, picking up some cartons and empty animal cages along one wall and a coffin-shaped black box, 4x4 by 8 feet. Jessup. There it is. Rosenberg. Oh, it's horizontal. It's smaller than the one we had in New York. Jessup. I don't think anybody's used it in years. But I connected it up yesterday, and it works. It won't take a week to get this place cleaned out and functioning. Parrish. You could get your ass in a sling if it ever gets out you're using an untested drug on human subjects. Jessup. Don't worry so much, Mason. Nothing's going to happen to me. Let's go get a quick hamburger. I told a kid in one of my classes I might see her tonight. He heads back to the door, turning the light switch so the room darkens. Parrish, exploding as he follows. All right, do what you want to do. I think you're both irresponsible as hell. So don't call me anymore, Arthur, to tell me you're worried about Eddie putting all this shit into him. I'm telling you now, don't put any more of that shit into him till you find out a hell of a lot more about it. I offered you the use of my lab and all the rats you can use, and that's as much as I want to be implicated in your dumb experiments. And go get your own hamburger. I got my own date I'm already an hour late for. He storms out. C building, Parrish's lab, day, 2 weeks later. A small Christmas tree is in evidence in an endocrinology lab. Parrish, a grad student, and an endocrinology fellow are standing by a scintillation counter. A large square aluminum contraption that looks like a dishwasher, except it has a digital recording device, which rattles off red digits. In the background, a second grad student and 2 lab technicians, each at their desks, cut microtomal sections or tend to the rats, or whatever one does in endocrinology labs. They are variously dressed. Parrish has on a long white lab coat. He has been doing rounds today, evidenced by the stethoscope sticking out of his pocket, an ophthalmoscope, a pen light, fountain pens. In one hand, he holds a stack of computer programming cards. Parrish glances at his watch. Parrish, to the endocrinology fellow extending the cards. You want to do these today? Endocrinology fellow takes them. Sure. B building, basement, isolation tank room, day. The brightly lit room has been cleared of everything but the black tank. Rosenberg is on a footstool bent over the tank, checking the EEG leads on Jessup's skull. The open doorway suddenly fills up with Parrish unbuttoning his coat. Rosenberg, carefully straightening out the wire leads, notices him. Rosenberg. Couldn't resist, right? Parrish. Somebody's got to keep an eye on you two sorcerers. He looks into the tank, camera looking with him. Jessup lies in it, floating naked just below the surface of inky black water, an imperceptible shimmering of white. His ankles are resting on what seems to be a surgical dam, his head on a headrest. He smiles up at Parrish. Parrish. What have you got in there? Some kind of salt solution? Rosenberg. 10% magnesium sulfate for buoyancy. Bringing the lid for the tank. Give me a hand with this, Mason. Reverse, looking up from Jessup's POV. Parrish and Rosenberg loom over the tank, carefully fitting the lid into its hinges. They slowly lower it. The screen goes shocking black. Parrish stands looking down at the covered black coffin of a tank. Parrish. Weird, man. Observation room, day. Rosenberg has flicked the lights off and is back in the observation room. There is polygraph paper in the EEG machine and the styli are scrawling. An audio speaker is on the top shelf in one corner. A one-way window looks out into the tank room where the coffin-like tank lies in penumbral shadow. Jessup's and Rosenberg's sheepskins are piled on the floor in a corner. Parrish adds his to the pile. Rosenberg clicks the intercom on. Rosenberg into the mic. 1, 2, 3, 4. Jessup on the speaker. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rosenberg on the mic. Okay, you're fine. Clicks the tape recorder on, speaks into it. Wednesday, January 7th, 4:28 p.m. Jessup's voice chants over the speaker. Rosenberg indicates the EEG machine. We went into theta like a shot. No spindling, nothing. Jessup, off-screen overriding. Hey, this is terrific. A plateau or a lowland, grassland savannas. I feel I'm actually alive and inside this landscape. Parrish looks through the one-way window. The black coffin-like box lies silent. He can see his own and Rosenberg's reflections superimposed on the tank. Jessup. A density of woodlands about a mile away beyond that mountains that seem to be smoking. Newly born mountains. Cenozoic. Later tertiary. I'm in an edge area. Utter tranquility but alive life in the trees. Life in the sedge. Paradise. The Garden of Eden, oh my God. The birth of man, that's it. The birth of man, that's got to be it. Reaction shot of Parrish getting nervous. To his left, Rosenberg writes in a notebook. Jessup, off screen. My God, there it is. A proto-human. The first and original truly human form. Tiny. Perhaps 4 feet high. Barely visible above the sedge grass. Completely furred, chimp-like, but erect, no knuckle walking, shorter arms, moving along rather gracefully. There's 3 of them. Bipedal, tiny little furred humanoid creatures. A rock, some kind of basaltic rock, a chunk of lava in their hands. They're stalking or hunting. That's it. It's a hunt. They're hunting something. It's me. It's me they're hunting. It's me. Annoyed, Parrish looks over to Rosenberg, putting a new tape into the recorder. Jessup, off screen. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm racing through the grass. I'm trying to get to the trees. They're on my flank. I'm struck by a stone. I'm down. They're on me. No, just one of them. It's his kill. The others have to wait their portion. He's beating me with the lava. He's gouging me. Parrish. For Christ's sakes. Rosenberg, clicking his mic. Are you okay, Eddie? Jessup, off screen. Ripping at my flesh. I'm the hunter now. I'm the killer. I'm killing. I'm eating. I'm eating the blood-hot flesh of the giant goat. I'm eating a goat I just killed. I'm eating a goat. The hysterical fluency of Jessup's report abruptly deteriorates into a curious croak, and then a series of quiet clicking noises, and then a strangulated sort of howl. It's too much for Parrish. He wrenches the door open, strides into tank room, day, where he crosses to the tank, pulls the hinged head section up. Parrish's POV, Jessup's white mask of a face cushioned in the rectangle of blackness, serene as a saint. Parrish, are you okay? Jessup, it's beautiful. Beautiful. Rosenberg, right behind Parrish. Do you want to come down? Jessup, no. Rosenberg lowers the lid. Parrish pulls out his cigar case, extracts one, heads back to the observation room, day. As Rosenberg enters, Parrish. Sounded like he was having a bad trip to me. Rosenberg. Some of these tank trips can get pretty creepy. The speaker emits another croaking grunt, a series of clicking sounds, then some lip-smacking sounds. Parrish rises nervously. Parrish. What the hell was that? Rosenberg into the mic. You okay? Jessup off screen. Beautiful. Parrish lights his cigar. Rosenberg. Do you want to stop this? Jessup off screen. Oh. Rosenberg. Do you want me to leave you alone? Jessup. Yes. B building, basement, corridor, night. Parrish comes out of the men's room adjusting his trousers. He walks down the corridor, glancing at his watch. He enters. Isolation tank room entrance, and left into observation room, where Rosenberg perches on a stool reading a mystery novel. Parrish. I thought you said these things don't last more than 4 hours. It's 8:45. A guttural sound erupts from the speaker. Rosenberg into Mike. Are you okay, Eddie? Looking through the window. He's coming out. The tank room. Night. Across the isolation tank as Jessup stands up, holding the lid, then setting it down against the side of the tank. Parrish and Rosenberg rush in. Rosenberg helping him to clamber out of the tank. Rosenberg, removing the EEG leads. I don't like being out of contact for these long periods of time, Eddie. Parrish hands Jessup a hooded terry cloth robe. Jessup slips into the robe, towels his hair. He nods at Rosenberg, a strange, monkish figure in the dark room, a towel over his head, only his white, wet eyes visible in the coped blackness of his face. He is trying to say something. His jaws move, but nothing comes out except a rasping, primitive noise. His eyes stare mutely at them. He tries again to talk, but produces only clicking sounds. He sinks slowly to his knees, his eyes staring in blank shock out of the black oval of his robe's cowl. Rosenberg. I think he's in shock. He flips on the rheostat, and the light rises. Parrish pulls the hood back. As the light strengthens, we see Jessup in the middle of the room on his knees, his robe hanging limply from his white body, his face blank, his cheeks and mouth wet with red blood, smeared where he has toweled his face, looking for all the world as if he has just ravened a carcass. Parrish. He must have bit his lip. He towels away some of the blood, then slips out of his lab coat, strips off his shirt, leans over to the tank, wets it in the tank, uses it to clean up Jessup's face. By now the light is up and the room well lit. Parrish fetches his examining light from his coat, pokes it into Jessup's mouth and up his nose. Parrish. Must have had a seizure. Hit his head or something. Jessup seems to be coming out of shock. He is trying to talk. All that comes out is a whistle and a clicking sound. He reaches out his hand to Rosenberg. His two friends finally get him standing. The shock is gone. His eyes respond intelligently. They glisten with excitement. He smiles and heads for the observation room, indicating that, since he can't talk, he must communicate in writing. The observation room. Night. By the time Parrish and Rosenberg get there, Jessup is seated on Rosenberg's chair and scrawling something in his notebook. Rosenberg leans over to read the message. Rosenberg. What do you want blood tests for? Parrish. Can you hear me? Can you understand me? Parrish reaches forward to palpitate his neck. Jessup angrily brushes Parrish's hand away, scrawls a long message in Rosenberg's notebook. Parrish. What's he say? Rosenberg, reading what Jessup writes. He says, a buccal smear and blood for a karyotype. Also, blood samples for the Goodman and Sarek labs. Pictures of my neck. A whole series of films. Now, before I reconstitute. ! Parrish slipping back into his lab coat. Before he what? Rosenberg. Before he reconstitutes. Parrish. Well, take his damn blood and then maybe he'll let me take a look at him. Rosenberg fetches a vacutainer from the airline bag he always carries and some tubes and a rubber tourniquet. He sets about taking blood samples from Jessup's left arm. Parrish to Jessup. Do you mind if I examine your neck for a moment? Jessup, who is in a state of excitement, rolls his eyes in exasperation, but allows Parrish to palpitate his neck. Rosenberg, inserting the syringe. Any masses? Parrish. Parrish auscultates Jessup's neck, shines his ophthalmoscope into his eyes. Jessup submits with little grace, only because he is confined by Rosenberg drawing blood. His inner turmoil is obvious. He balances precariously on the chair in his bulky robe, his legs crossed, one swinging nervously. Finally, he pushes Parrish aside and scrawls in the notebook again. Parrish leans over to read. Parrish, losing his temper. Oh, stop talking shit. Are you saying your dumb hallucination has externalized? Rosenberg, inserting a new tube. What do you write? Parrish, reading. Not common aphasia. Time-space fallout from the hallucination. bend so that he is nose to nose with Jessup. You are a fucking flake, Jessup, so get dressed and I'm taking you over to the Brigham to do a complete workup on you. As Jessup shakes his head, Parrish explodes. You're a very sick dude, you dumb son of a bitch. And I want to look down your throat, get some skull films, do a CAT scan, maybe even an arteriogram, and I'd like an unbiased eye to look at those EEG tracings. Jessup shakes his head. An arctic, imperious no. He scribbles a brief message and stabs it with 2 exclamation points. Parrish. He just wants x-rays. Okay, finish up with him, Arthur, and let's get him over to x-ray. The tank room, 10 minutes later. Parrish, in his jacket, is cleaning up in the tank room. He rolls his torn shirt into a ball with Jessup's bloody robe, goes over to make sure the valves have been shut tight, then goes into the observation room, where Rosenberg and Jessup are also tidying up, packing polygraph paper, etc. Parrish, indicating Jessup's robe. I'll be right back, I just want to get rid of this stuff. He exits. Sub-basement tunnel night. Empty except for the 3 of them, a quixotic trio, shambling, bulky Parrish, tiny Rosenberg carrying his airline bag, Jessup in Levi's, his shirt tail not entirely tucked in. They are moving through the bowels of the building. The walls are aligned with huge, thick hot water pipes. They pass the open incinerators, wells dug deep into the foundations of the buildings. Flames leap up from the depths. Rosenberg as they go. Is it possible it's purely mechanical? Parrish. Well, neurologically he's grossly intact, and if it isn't neurological, then it's got to be mechanical. They push through swinging doors. Parrish pulls an exit door open. Parrish. I'd like to get a look at his cords and do a barium swallow. A stairwell, night. They head upstairs. Parrish. Maybe I'll run down to emergency and pick up an ENT bag. Brigham Hospital, corridor, night. The 3 of them coming down the otherwise empty yellow-tiled hospital corridor to a door which has a little wooden marker sticking out of the wall above it, reading X-ray. They turn into the X-ray department, outer room. A technician looks up at this late-night interruption. Parrish. I want some plain films of this guy's neck. A PA, a lateral end, and oblique. Technician. Jesus, doctor, I'm backed up to my ass for tonight. Parrish, snapping. Take the damn pictures, this is an emergency. The technician leads Jessup into an X-ray room and closes the door. Parrish leans back against the wall. Rosenberg. I guess we better not tell Eddie he had blood on his face when he came out of the tank. He'll claim it was goat's blood from that goat he was eating in his hallucination. Parrish. Oh, for Christ's sakes, you really are getting as weird as he is. Rosenberg. Well, what do you think happened? Parrish, fishing out a cigar. He's not the type for an hysterical conversation, so I'm thinking seizure. He came out of the tank in a fugue state, and he had blood all over his face. He must have had a seizure in the tank, bit his tongue while convulsing, and his post-Italy istically aphasic. I thought maybe he had a vascular insult, a stroke, or flipped an embolus, but neurologically he's intact, so I'm thinking seizure now. Inside the X-ray room. The technician clips up the X-rays for Parrish, Rosenberg, and Jessup to see. They huddle, and Jessup points with excitement to the throat area. Parrish, take it easy. None of us are terrific at reading x-rays. Technician, what are you guys looking for? Parrish, indicating the x-rays. Put these things in an envelope, and who's reading tonight in radiology? Technician, Dr. Weissenschaft. Jessup puts his hand on Parrish's arm and shakes his head. Parrish, barely controlling his temper. I want someone to look at those x-rays who can read them, Eddie. Jessup indicates he wants to talk outside. He and Parrish go out into the hospital. The two of them stand in a long, empty hospital corridor. Jessup, I'd rather not have everybody in the Brigham in on this. It's bad enough we've got this nosy x-ray technician. It takes Parrish a moment to realize Jessup is talking again. Parrish, are you all right? Jessup, I'm fine, Mason. I tried to indicate this was just a transient thing. Parrish, a transient ischemic attack. That's what it was. Leans into the x-ray department to say to Rosenberg, he's got his voice back. Rosenberg comes out into the hallway carrying the large manila envelope containing the x-rays. Jessup, it wasn't an ischemic attack, it wasn't a seizure. You saw the x-rays, Mason. There was a clear fusion of the digastric muscles to the hyoid bone, and the larynx was in an unusually forward position. I'm not sure, but I think the digastric muscles, which are looped in humans, are fused directly to the bones in apes. I obviously regressed to some quasi-simian creature. Parrish takes the envelope of x-rays from Rosenberg. Parrish, trying not to explode. I'm taking these over to someone who can read them right. We're reading them wrong. That's all there is to it. Because nobody's going to tell me you de-differentiated from your goddamn genetic structure for 4 goddamn hours and then reconstituted. The more he tries to keep his voice down, the more apoplectic he gets. I'm a professor of endocrinology at the Harvard Medical School. I'm an attending physician at the Peter Bent Brigham Hospital, a consulting editor to the American Journal of Endocrinology, a fellow and vice president of the Eastern Association of Endocrinologists, the president of the Journal Club. He erupts into full-blown rage, and I'm not going to listen to any more of your Kabbalistic quantum frigging dumb limbo mumbo jumbo. Brandishing the envelope. I'm going to show these to a radiologist. He turns, strides down the hallway to another door which is marked radiology, thrusts the door open, enters. Department of Radiology, night. Dr. Weissenschaft, an unhappy resident, is poring over a stack of x-rays. Parrish hands him an envelope, working to keep himself under control. Parrish, do me a favor, take a look at these. Weissenschaft, extracting the films. What's the story in this case? Parrish, 35-year-old white man, acute onset of aphasia, no history of trauma. Weissenschaft, affixing the x-rays to the light. What are you looking for? Parrish, it looks to me like the architecture is somewhat abnormal. Weissenschaft, peering at the film. Somewhat? The guy's a fucking gorilla. Jessup's flat. Bedroom. Night. Close-up of Jessup asleep, and his eyes slowly open. Despite the darkness in the room, his eyes glisten with terror. His mouth opens slowly till it is agape with terror, as if he is about to scream. Camera suddenly pulls back as he abruptly rises, throwing the blanket off him. He stares at his body. Under his pajama bottoms, something terrible seems to be happening to his body. It is swelling and contorting as if forces inside his body were trying to break out. On the other side of the bed, now in view, the young female medical student he had mentioned is asleep, her back to us. Closer angles of Jessup's body. His arm shrivels into a bent little furred arm, much like a rat's paw. Suddenly, his feet are webbed, then furred, and a second later back to normal. His face is a mask of pain. He touches his head and feels the bones of his skull. His jaw, the bones above his eyebrows moving under his skin, are all reassembling into new formations. He bends forward, clutching the back of his neck as if he'd been struck. The musculature of his chest surges and subsides. Cracks appear and spread throughout his body. The medical student stirs. Med student drowsily. Are you okay, Dr. Jessup? Jessup, on his elbows and no longer in pain as he observes the deformations of his body. Yes. He forces himself to sit up, his legs hanging over the side of the bed, and almost falls to his knees. Carefully, he makes his way to the bathroom, all the while his body crumbling and buckling as if it were dry earth, as if seismic forces were at work within him. He gets himself into the bathroom, where he closes the door, turns on the light, and stares in the full-length mirror. Jessup's POV. In the dull yellow bathroom light, he sees a series of disjunctive, evolutionary images of himself, flickering one after the other, lasting only a fraction of a second. They are mostly hominid and proto-human images, Ramapithecine figures in which he is no more than 3 feet tall. Several reflections reveal him as a delicately fingered, insect-eating, lemur-like animal with enormous soft eyes, in a tree and clutching a branch. As quickly he is his realistic self again, a slight, white-skinned young man in his late 30s wearing pajama pants. It all lasted perhaps 5 seconds. Med student, off-screen calling through the closed door. Are you all right, Dr. Jessup? Jessup, staring at his own reflection. I'm fine. He opens the door and sees a momentary vision of apocalyptic formations. He reels back, observes it closely, then comes out into the bedroom. Night. The med student stands, holding the blanket around her, more asleep than awake. Jessup heads for his desk. Med student. Are you all right, Dr. Jessup? Jessup. I just want to make a few notes. He sits down, clicks on the desk lamp, reaches for a notebook, and begins to write. Behind him, the med student sinks back onto the bed and is instantly asleep. Jessup writes, then pauses to look again at his naked right arm. Camera pans down to the arm. A protoplasmic substance bulges out and moves up his arm under the skin like a mole, and disappears into his elbow. He regards this with blank astonishment, then returns to his meticulous noting of what has just happened. Logan Airport, April 1976, sunny day. A KLM jumbo jet touches down. Logan Airport Customs arrival gate. Emily and the girls, brown from a year of African sun, with a year's worth of luggage, cartons, crates, bags, accompany a porter wheeling their gear toward the arrival gate. Jessup is among the crowd awaiting the passengers. Reverse from Emily to the greeters where Jessup can easily be spotted. Emily points out their father to the girls who race to him. He embraces them both, hugs them individually, and embraces Emily too as she gets to the gate. Jessup. My God, you all look so marvelous. Emily studies his face, detecting a feverish enthusiasm. Emily. How have you been, Eddie? He pauses before answering. Jessup. I don't know. Strange things have been happening. He seizes both squealing kids, one under each arm, and heads off. Grace. Are you going to drive us to our new house? Jessup. You bet your life. I'm going to help you unpack, and depending on how nice you are to me, I may take you all to a Chinese restaurant. Concerned by the strange, almost mad and uncharacteristic exuberance of her husband, Emily follows with the porter and luggage. Emily's new home, living room, dusk. Several hours later, the whole flat, the bottom floor of a Cape Cod house on Avon Hill in Cambridge, is a wild disarray of packed and unpacked luggage. Cartons and valises lay open in every room. Clothing is piled on beds or heaped on the floor. Books and notebooks, cans of film, and stacks of tape recorder cassettes and reels are massed in mounds on beds, chairs, and tables. Through the windows, we can see dusk descending. We might even catch glimpses of the Jessup children on the front porch. Amidst this disarray, Emily follows her own private pattern of efficiency. Piling and sorting. She turns on a lamp with an orange shade, casting a warm light. All the while, she chats away with Jessup in the back in the kitchen at the rear of the living room. He sits at the Formica table, legs crossed, sipping coffee. Emily. Anyway, don't let anybody tell you baboons aren't occasionally carnivorous. I personally observed 2 instances of predation which involved the unmistakable behavior of hunters. A pair of baboons killed young Thompson gazelles and ate them. There was a rudimentary communication between the 2 baboons that was noticeably different from the usual baboon vocalizations. So I've become fascinated with the work on nonverbal communication being done with apes. I've been corresponding with the gardeners at the University of Nevada. I may just go out and spend a couple of weeks there this summer. I've got nothing else except to write up my report. Jessup. I don't suppose you recorded any of those baboon sounds. Emily. Yes, of course I did. Why? She comes into the kitchen, dusk, where she pours herself a cup of coffee. Jessup. I'd like very much to hear them. Emily. Of course. She pulls up a chair to join him at the table. Jessup. Mrs. Tully said she'll be here tomorrow morning at 10:30 to help you put everything away. She wanted to know if you wanted her to come back to work steady, and I said I was sure you would. She nods. A silence falls between them. They sip at their cups. She steals a glance at him. Emily. I got a letter from Mason about a week ago, just before we left Nairobi. He says you've been working with a very complex drug you brought back from Mexico. It hasn't been tested yet, and it's dangerous as hell. Jessup. What else did Mason write you? Emily. He says that over the past year you've taken about 2 grams of that drug yourself, and that you had a very unusual instance of genetic regression about 3 months ago. You may have leukemia or lymphoma. He's been trying to get you into the hospital for a complete workup, but you refuse to go. He's worried stiff that you're cracking up. He thinks you're behaving very strangely, and he begged me to talk to you about this when I got back. Jessup. Mason is pathologically incapable of keeping his mouth shut about anything. Emily. He's worried about you. Jessup. He's also a stupid, starched doctrinaire idiot. Emily. Mason is a first-rate doctor. Jessup. It's not leukemia or any other kind of cancer. He stands, flashed with fury, his hands trembling with his effort to control a mounting rage. Jessup. I let him do a liver-spleen scan on me and a CAT scan. I've been probed, scoped, and palpitated. Parrish has had a mirror down my throat or up my ass every half hour for 3 months, and there is no evidence, no suggestion whatsoever of cancer. She says nothing. He strides off into the living room and is suddenly back. Jessup. What else did he write you? Which of these has the baboon vocalizations on them? I'd like to hear them. Emily. Why? Jessup. Did Mason write you that during that incident of regression I went through, I had an aphasic experience for about 4 hours? The only sounds I could get out were clicks and grunts. I've got a hunch they're very much like the baboon vocalizations you have on your tapes. Emily. Mason says that you took blood tests, and the lab report showed some characteristics of simian blood group systems. Jessup. They also picked up antigens specific to man. Emily. I'd like to see that data. Jessup. We also took a buccal smear. The chromosomal count was 48. Emily. Are you serious? Jessup. And the structure of the karyotype was also non-human. I mean, for God's sake, the thing to do is for me to get back in that isolation tank and try it again. Let's see if it happens again. I mean, none of us really believes it happened. After 3 months, I'm beginning to wonder if it ever happened to myself. But oh no, they won't go back in the tank. Mason's taken over the whole project. He's got Arthur up in his lab every day, fractionating rats' brains. What the hell am I supposed to do while they're fractionating rats' brains? His daughter appears in the doorway, fearfully watches her father ranting and raving. Grace. Mommy? Jessup quiets down for her. Everybody thinks your daddy's going nuts. Grace. Mommy, when are we going to eat? Emily, rushing to scurry the child away from the tense discussion. Go on upstairs and get dressed. Emily moves to the kitchen to prepare supper. Jessup. I was convinced the regression was triggered by an act of consciousness. While I was in the tank, I entered another consciousness. I became another self. And the drug, in some way, triggered the externalization of that other, more primitive self. Jessup gets increasingly furious with Emily's actions away from him to prepare food, and he yells. Jessup, at least look at my data. Emily, of course. Maybe tomorrow afternoon. Would tomorrow afternoon be all right? Jessup, don't patronize me. Emily, I'm not. Jessup, it's just possible I'm not mad, you know. I'm asking you to make a small quantum jump with me, to accept one deviant concept, that our other states of consciousness are as real as our waking state, and that reality can be externalized. Emily, you're screaming. Jessup, I know, but I've been getting this patronizing shit from Arthur and Mason for 3 months now, and I'm sick of it. We've got millions of years stored away in that computer bank we call our minds. We've got trillions of dormant genes in us, our whole evolutionary past. Perhaps I've tapped into that. For God's sake, all I'm saying is I want to get back to that tank and repeat the experiment. The most elementary laboratory behavior. Repeat the experiment. Confirm it. I would like other responsible scientists with me when I do it. I'd like a little consensual validation on this. We may have demonstrated a whole new force in nature. My God, don't you agree it merits further investigation? I've got all the tapes, notes, and everything at my place. What time would you like to come over and look at this stuff tomorrow? Emily. 2:30? Smiles nervously. I just want to get the girls. I'll be right back. Carrying Margaret, she goes out into the entrance foyer. She is very nervous and a little frightened. She opens the front door and goes out into the front porch dusk, where she stands scouring the area for her other daughter. She spots her down the block a bit, talking to a neighbor with a small boy. She moves quickly down the porch steps and out to Avon Hill dusk, where she sets Margaret down and heads across the street. Emily. Grace? The woman turns to her, smiling. Neighbor. I'm Linda Sandys. She points to a gray clapboard down the block. I belong to that house over there. Emily. I'm Emily Jessup. Neighbor. And you've just come back from Africa today. Grace has been telling me and Georgie all about it. My husband's in French classics. Emily. I'm in anthropology. Neighbor. Would you like to come over and have some coffee? Emily, forcing a smile. I'd love to, really, but I've got a hungry husband to back in the house. To her daughters. We're going to a Chinese restaurant. The children race back to the house. Emily. We're still unpacking. Neighbor, of course. Emily, I'll take you up on that coffee tomorrow morning if I may. Neighbor, please. The gray house there. Emily. Thank you. Excuse me. She hurries back down the street. When she gets to the front porch, both kids are coming out of the house onto the porch. Emily, frightened. Is your father all right? Grace. Where is he? Emily. Oh, God. Grace. Are we still going to the Chinese restaurant? Emily. Yes, of course. I just want to make a few phone calls. Let's get inside. Isolation tank room. Night. The screen is black. A door in the back of the blackness opens, and Jessup enters, silhouetted in the rectangle of light made by the open doorway. A moment later, subdued lighting comes on. We are in the isolation tank room. Across the black tank, we see Jessup entering. He wears a jacket, sweater, and shapeless chinos from the previous scenes, and carries Rosenberg's airline bag. He turns on a valve. Water rumbles into the tank. He checks the thermostat, opens the bag, extracts a jar of magnesium sulfate, pours it into the spume gathering at the bottom of the tank. Stripping off his jacket and sweater, he keeps checking the water level. He takes a mason jar of clear liquid out of the bag, measures 4 cc's of the liquid into a syringe, squirts that into a beaker. He drains the beaker in a single gulp. He walks to a shadowy corner where a white porcelain bowl is sitting, stripping as he goes. He adds his shirt to the piles made by his jacket and sweater. He goes into the observation room, where he sits, checks the time on his watch, and makes a notation in a notebook. He unclips his watch, stands, walks back into the tank room, where he drops the watch on his clothing, checks the water level in the tank. Number 22, Avon Hill, Emily's house, night. A taxi pulls up. The door opens and Grace and Margaret tumble out and head for the porch. They are followed by their mother. Emily's house, porch. Emily, unlocking the front door. It's 8:30, so get washed and changed right now, and I'm in no mood for any trouble from either of you tonight. Do you understand? The phone is ringing inside. She gets the door open, the kids scoot in. Emily hurries across the foyer night and into the living room. The phone is still ringing. She picks it up, snapping on the lights as she does. Emily, on phone. Yes? Hello? Oh, Mason, thank you for calling. I assume you've spoken to Arthur. No, I just got back from dinner with the kids. Well, I just don't know what to say. I think you're absolutely right. I think he's on the verge of a breakdown. He was here all afternoon and carried on like a madman and then just disappeared. Ordinarily, I wouldn't be this panicky, but I just am. The observation room, night. We are looking through the one-way window into the tank room at the black coffin-like tank shrouded in shadow. We watch it for a beat. Then the lid starts to rise. It's being raised by what seems to be a furred arm. The tank room. Angle looking down on the tank as the lid is raised out of its grooves and pushed thudding to the floor, revealing a 4-foot-high creature covered with a fine fur, standing waist-deep in the water. Its stance human, bipedal, if a bit sloping in the shoulders. Definable features except for a massive projecting ridge of bone above the eyebrows and a prognathic jaw. A somewhat flattened skull, a low brow, chinless. A creature just tall enough for its little red eyes to barely see over the walls of the tank. It grunts, makes a clicking sound. B building, cadaver room, an hour later, 9:30 p.m. Hector Ortega, 39 years old, one of the janitorial staff at the medical school, gathers trash bags. This is the room where they keep the cadavers hanging on hooks like sides of beef for the morning's dissection classes. There are 2 such naked, death-white cadavers hanging now. Ortega carries out the trash into B building, basement corridor, where he unloads them into the can of his cleaning cart. Then he trundles the cart along the corridor, trying doors as he goes. All are locked until he gets to the door of the isolation tank room, which is marked electroencephalography. Encephalography. It is unaccountably open. Interested, Ortega goes into the isolation tank room entryway, night. The lights are on here and in the observation room. The door between them is closed. Ortega goes into the observation room. He looks through the one-way window into the tank room at the sinister, coffin-like uncovered tank. Ortega shrugs, starts to go back into the corridor, opens the door, changes his mind, turns and opens the door to the tank room. He is immediately knocked against the wall by a hurtling, ferocious little animal, which in his confusion Ortega takes to be a dog. At least he mutters imprecations in Spanish about who the hell down here is keeping a fucking dog. The animal has gotten out the door just before it closes. Ortega goes back out into B building corridor. What he sees now, about 15 yards down the hall, is an ape-like creature, covered with a fine fur that is unmistakably human. It stands upright. Its eyes are small and red, but not deep-socketed like an ape's. Human intelligence seems to be in them. The creature is no bigger than Ortega's own 9-year-old son, but it is fierce, making a savage, rumbling snarl, curling its lip and baring its teeth, which are yellow, even and very human in appearance. Ortega is getting a little scared. He reaches for his janitor's broom and begins to unscrew a long handle. Ortega, calling hopefully to a colleague. Hey, Jameson, are you still there? Come here. His voice echoes in the empty basement corridor. No response. Holding the broom pole, he takes a step toward the strange animal watching them. Ortega. Hey, Jameson, in the name of God, come over here and see this. Brandishes his pole at the creature. Es mejor que salgas de aquí antes de cometa una locura. The creature's face flares with rage. It raises both furred fists and screams in fury. Ortega turns and bolts up the corridor to another hallway leading to D building. Connecting corridor to D building. Ortega comes tearing halfway down to a door marked Security Office. Behind him, he can hear enraged screeches echoing off the walls. He knocks on the door of the security office, looking back up the connecting corridor, clutching his broomstick. The corridor is empty, but still echoing. The door opens, and the bulky figure of Sergeant George Obispo, a tall, uniformed man, appears. Obispo. ¿Qué pasa? Ortega, breathing hard, figuring out what's the matter. Hay un animal suelto en el edificio B. Obispo. ¿Qué clase de animal es? Ortega. Takes a moment to sort things out. Un mono crió. A shriek from the distant bowels of a building B ricochets off the walls. Obispo. Carajo. He strides up the corridor, unbuckling his nightstick. Ortega follows, holding his broom pole. Halfway down, they both pull up short because in front of them, where the corridors to the buildings cross, the strange little creature suddenly lopes into view, silhouetted in diffused yellow light. It regards the two men and bursts into a shrill bark. Its growl clearly signifies its frustration with the situation. It moves off with startling quickness. Obispo and Ortega break into a trot to get to B building corridor. They pause, look down the length of the corridor to the right. It's empty. There is an exit door at the far end. Obispo pulls out his walkie-talkie, speaking into it as he moves slowly up B corridor into the set. Charlie? Charlie Thomas, where are you? In the library? Who you with? Okay, listen, we got an animal loose in B building basement, so you and Mingus come over here right away. We'll be in the north corridor that goes back to the nurse's residence, so you guys come down the other way, and we'll meet you at the door. We'll keep him cornered, but he's a pretty good-sized ape, and I better call the animal rooms and see what he's doing down here. But be very careful because he looks dangerous. Fast, because I don't know how long we can hold him down here. Obispo and Ortega have reached the north corridor. Empty. This area is poorly lighted. An overhead neon tube is blown. It serves as a sometime storage area. A corrugated metal door leads to Longwood Street loading platform on the left side. Huge empty cardboard cartons stand against this door. It's also an auxiliary changing room for the students, and both walls are lined with green and gray lockers. About 60 yards down, there is a set of doors with wire-reinforced windows in the upper halves. Ortega. He's hiding in there somewhere. Obispo. No CA? Nods at exit. You think he could have got out that way? Ortega tugs at the heavy door. It's stuck, and takes all of Ortega's strength to open it. Ortega. He could never open this door. Nevertheless, he leans into the stairwell and looks up to the street level and down to the sub-basement level. Behind him, Sergeant Obispo puts his walkie-talkie back into the case and, holding his club, moves into the shadows between the lockers, poking them with his club. Camera Dolly is with him. A terrifying shriek, and the creature leaps down upon him from the top of the lockers. Sergeant Obispo falls to the floor with a shout of terror. His club clatters on the cement. The stairwell. Ortega, who has gone down a landing, is petrified by the shrieks. He starts climbing back up, tugs open the heavy door, and bolts into the north corridor, where he stops, stares. Across Ortega to where the hideous little creature is battering away at the fallen, screaming Sergeant Obispo with the sergeant's own nightstick. The creature spots Ortega, whirls, and it charges at the poor man. He bolts for his life down the B building corridor. North corridor, the other side of the doors. Security officers Thomas and Mingus break into a run, hearing Obispo's screams. Thomas is pulling out his chain of keys and tries to unlock doors. It is difficult to tell what is going on because the wire-reinforced windows deform the view. Their POV through the windows. A confused flux of shapes on the floor. The creature's high-pitched scream and Obispo's bellows of pain. Suddenly, the rectangular window is filled with a savage, hairy face, deformed by the quality of the glass. Thomas and Mingus startle back from the door. Mingus pulls at his gun holster. Thomas gets the door open. The two guards fling themselves into the other corridor. Obispo is on his knees, a hulking black silhouette holding his head and bleeding heavily. He slowly sinks unconscious to the floor. At the juncture of the corridors, the heavy exit door is slowly wheezing shut. The creature, whatever it was, is gone.